Welcome back. And so as we start off this morning, the best that we can do is reflect on the state of ex-servicemen who have offered their best years serving their fatherland. Of course, the protest yesterday led by journalist and activist Shuwere in defense of the rights of police retirees who are demanding, amongst other things, exit from the contributory pension scheme. But what exactly, are the defects or the problem with the contributory pension scheme? Let's have this conversation this morning with who should know. Welcome with us, President, Pension Fund Operators Association of Nigeria, Mr. Oguche Aguda, who joins us right here in our Lagos studio. Good morning, Mr. Aguda. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you too. And, first of all, I can't get out of my, mind that viral video of that retired police officer, which came through some weeks ago, where he was complaining about what he got as a credit alert for his gratuity and, of course, his pension. And he said upon, realizing what the breakdown was, 1 million naira was actually his pension, while 2 million naira was his gratuity. And that raises a lot of questions on many levels about what he was earning while he was in service. And, of course, other issues about career progression or the lack of it in the police force. I'd like you to speak to these issues for starters.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that, we stand with the police. I always say we stand with the police and we are committed to their welfare. When I drive past police officers, I always stop, ask them how they're doing, how's their pensions, because I want to feel their pulse, right? So we start with the police and the welfare. I think that's the first thing. But the second thing is to say, your pensions under the CPS is dependent on your salary, how much you earn, how much has been contributed. So that's
CPS means contributory
pension scheme. So that's very important. That's fundamental. As a matter of fact, under any pension scheme, it depends on your salary, right? So, and we empathize with them. But when the police officer says they received this amount, I think that's a plus, because we need to realize that 20 years ago, they were not receiving that amount. So they are receiving it. It's constant, it's consistent. They don't have to beg or bribe to receive it. That's a plus. And that's something as a country we've moved past. If you see some of the states, one under the contributory pension scheme, the challenge they're having is that they're not even getting it. So we've moved past that, and these ones are saying they're getting it, but it's low. So we should all agree that we've passed a particular stage. So now we need to go to the second problem, which is, okay, it's not adequate for them. And that's a different conversation, which we'll get into. But key thing, we empathize with them, but to realize that what you get under the contributory pension scheme is a function of your remuneration, your salaries. If we look at the contributory pension scheme is for all federal workers and all private sector workers. Federal workers, we have workers in the central bank, NNPC, NDIC, SEC. These guys are not protesting. Why? Because their salaries are high, right? And your pensions is a function of your salary. So yes, the police are complaining, but it is really a case of how much they are paid. I actually asked them, so I had engagement with some of them, and he says he received this particular amount as pension. So I asked him, how much was your salary? And you see that it wasn't far from what he was getting. So we need to isolate the issues, remove facts from fiction, and that will help us to see how we can resolve the issues.
So it also suggests that a policeman will be in service for possibly 2 decades, and he's not being moved up on the hierarchy.
Very true.
And that reflects on what his contributory pension scheme is at the end of the day. How can this be corrected?
So this is an issue of the welfare of the police generally. We've made those representations to the police hierarchy, and it's really about how they are progressing their career. I mean, yesterday we were talking about this issue, of course, because it's topical, and we heard different stories of some people being on the same level for 20 years. Of course, if you're on the same level for that number of years and your salary is constant, your pension contribution is also, limited. The beauty of the contributory pension scheme is when you start working maybe in your 20s, 25 on an ideal scenario, when you are every year, maybe salary increases over a 30-year period with promotions, with increases, the money that you're contributing should be enough when you retire. But depending on where you work, and I think it's the general welfare of the police, which we need to discuss and look at.
So let's talk about that welfare of the police, which is the heart of the matter. As you've stated, we've crossed the barrier of inability to pay.
Yes.
And now we're looking at how much is being paid into the pension scheme in the first place. So give from your insider view, what does an average policeman earn? What comes as pension? Because that ratio, as you said, is what works. And what can we do to upscale it? Because something has to be done. We cannot put gun and there's something they call the real rate of return in investment. So when you make an investment, at the end of the day, when you now cash back or you get interest or whatever it is you gain from that investment, you look at what inflation is looking at, and then you compare it to know how much you have really earned, whether you really made a return. And all of this is acting on whatever it is they are earning. So let's start from how much do you think an average policeman is earning from your record? And so that will inform how much contribution is coming in. And then how much would that come to in 30 years now of service?
Yeah, so I think typically, with the Federal Civil Service, you retire 60 years or 35 years of service. So we try
IGP is 65 now. So let's put that. Only the IGP. No, only the IGP has that exception for now.
So we try to do some modeling to say, maybe average salary is 160,000. There's some information flying around there, 160,000, and your pensions is a function of your basic housing and transport, right? A percentage of that. So even that 160 is not the whole amount that is being contributed. So let's say about that, maybe about 60,000, and then 8%, which is you, the employee, is what is contributed on a monthly basis, and 10% from the employer. So in that instance that we use the 160,000 and maybe about 50,000 with those basic housing and transport. So maybe 4,000 is contributed by you and 6,000 contributed by your employer. So maybe 10,000 a month. So that is what is contributed in your pensions account every month. And that money is meant to be invested. It's meant to be compounded and over time. So what should happen, in a normal climate is that maybe within 3 years, your salary increases, you get promotions, those monies increase and those contributions will increase. But if it's stagnant, even though the returns are much, then your payouts will be less. One of the things we've advocated is that for the federal government or the police hierarchy to increase the contributions for the police force. So right now it's 10%. They can decide to say, well, we increase it to 20% perhaps. So that's
government should increase their own end,
yes.
Not the end of the
employers. Yeah, okay. Employees, sorry.
Employees, sorry.
So that the contributions are more. And when the contributions are more, the amount to invest is more, and the amount that will get at payout is more. So those are one of the suggestions that we've made, right?
It's a lot to unpack. Yes. I don't know if you landed on the thought you were making.
Well, yeah, I haven't landed, but I guess there's time. I don't know how much time we have, but
okay, I thought you had landed. So, listen to the retired police officers. You hear some of them say, "I get 20,000 naira monthly as pension." I mean, people who earn minimum wage are complaining that even the minimum wage, their take home is not taking them home. Now, someone who's earning like 30% of that per month, I mean, how do you expect the person to survive? So what they're saying is we do not want to be a part of this CPS anymore. And there have been different talks about, is the CPS going the way of the defined benefit pension scheme? I mean, pre-2004 when President Olusegun Obasanjo brought in CPS. So what do you say to those who are saying, we do not want to be a part of CPS anymore? Leave us, let us be.
Yeah, so there's also a video where the IGP of police actually mentioned to say, you guys want to move to the defined benefit scheme. Do you know where you are going? Have you looked at the content of those bills? He asked that question, and it's really something to ask for them. Have they looked at the content of the bill? Have they looked at where they want to go to? So they want to go back to the defined benefit scheme. On the defined benefit scheme, your pensions is as a result of a direct debit to the Consolidated Revenue Fund, right? Meaning that every year, the government will pay you from its own coffers. But what we need to realize is the Consolidated Revenue Fund is not a bottomless pit. Right now, on Wednesday, the Nigerian Medical Association have threatened strike because they say, if their demands are not met. So there's a lot that is going there. And if your pensions is based on the Consolidated Revenue Fund as they want to go to, some years we might not make much. For instance, in the first half of this year, Nigeria has missed its target by 70 million barrels. So our revenue is going down. So what happens in the year where the revenue is not going? Your pensions will not be paid because it's not funded, right? So going back to those schemes, it might seem like a good move on the face of it, but it's not fiscally sustainable. And perhaps in 1 or 2 years, there might be budgets, but in some years where there are no budgets, there's nothing paid. In addition, under that scheme, if you look at the bill that they are proposing, it says that, you must have been working for a number of years in order to receive pensions. So the board will determine who receives pension. Under this scheme, your RSA account, your retirement savings account, it's your own. It doesn't matter whether you resign. It doesn't matter whether you are court-martialed. As a matter of fact, there were some military personnel who were court-martialed and they were dismissed. Guess what? They couldn't get their pensions because the board will determine. But under this scheme, your retirement savings account is your own. You can determine how your pensions are received. It doesn't matter whether your boss likes you, your boss doesn't like you, you are court-martialed, you are dismissed. So under the CPS, there are many safeguards. What we now need to see is how do we increase that? It doesn't matter whether you move to the defined benefit scheme or the CPS. Pensions are a function of your salary. That is very important.
Now, I sort of get what you're saying,
All right.
but let's step back a bit.
All right.
I like the fact that you leaned back. The fact that it is not working for them, right? The end justifies the means. In fact, it helps you make sense of the means. 20,000 naira monthly does not make sense. The least they should be earning as pensioners should be at least 100,000. In fact, a lot of people will frown at me saying 100,000 today in Nigeria. So they're earning 20,000 naira. Obviously, that is not right, on the one hand. Secondly, they say, well, this whole PENCOM and pension scheme, the CPS, is like a whole structure that takes more from us, but gives us less. So you hear some of them say, some of the employees in all the pension companies, operators, earn more than even the people who their monies are being deducted in that sense. So we're basically working for you, and I'm sure you've gotten that narrative a lot.
Yeah.
So that's the second point I want you to speak to. Thirdly, before the transition to the CPS meant that the monies from the defined benefit pension scheme was moved to the CPS. So at least that should improve the money in that sense. So speak to those three issues. One, they feel like they are working, doing the work, and the operators are the ones earning all of the money. Secondly, what happened to the monies they got from the defined benefits pension scheme up until this one? Thirdly, how can we improve this 20,000 naira?
Yeah, so I like the fact that we step back. And we step back when I say the contributory pension scheme, it covers all federal employees, private sector, and those in the FCT. So again, the federal employees, have we seen the central bank retirees protest? Have we seen NDIC retirees protest? Have we seen NIMASA retirees protest? It's a function of how much you are paid when you are working. So for those that might be receiving meager salaries, it's because their pensions or their pay is low. It doesn't matter what scheme you move to. It doesn't matter. That's number one. Number two is that under the contributory pension scheme, there's a minimum pension guarantee, and that is being implemented, whereby everyone is going to get a minimum pension guarantee. It doesnning matter how much is in your RSA, you will get a minimum pension guarantee. And PENCOM, last month, June, they've introduced a pension boost, meaning that all pensioners will receive an average of 40% increase, because of the investment returns that happen over the years. Some might receive more, some might receive less, but on average 40%. So those officers this month, they will receive more.
So the ones earning 20,000 will earn 28,000 now.
Well, they will receive
because
more.
That's 40%.
Again, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of those that say they earn this because, it's individual, data protection and all of that. But what I can say is that there's going to be a minimum pension guarantee and there's going to be a pension boost. And that's going to happen annually, such that when the investment return comes, they earn more. That's number one. Number two is that, they say maybe the staff of the pension funds are earning more than them. Again, the staff of the pension funds who are managing the pension fund, maybe they're accountants, they're lawyers, they are earning their pay. So it's really still goes back to the case of remuneration. What's the remuneration practices within the police? Again, there are accountants within the police, there are lawyers in the police. How is their pay structured among their peers in terms of in other industries? Your pensions will be a function of your pay. That's standard, right? And again, what I've said is that we need to look at pay across police and welfare generally. But in terms of the accrued rights, again, that's a big issue because if you've worked for 30 years and you're retiring this year, it means that some part of your work life was under the defined benefit scheme. And when the transition happened, when the cutoff happened, your contributions are being made, right? And when you retire, that money is in your account. But then there's still some amount, which is an accrued rights, which was before we moved to the contributory pension scheme. And that has been an issue for years, right? But this administration, they've approved about 758 billion to clear part of that. And again, this goes back to the fact that successive governments have not paid this. Why? Because they didn't have the money for it, right? So if we are going to move the whole pension liability to the government, when the government couldn't even pay some portion of that, it's going to cost a financial Armageddon, really, in terms of sustainability. And what I want to say is that, in the US, for instance, they have a congressional budget office. If they're going to pass a bill, they have to look at what's the sustainability of that bill. The police pension bill is not fiscally sustainable and it's not implementable because...
Is it a question of fiscal sustainability or systemic prioritization?
Yeah.
Because you gave an analogy.
Yes.
NIMASA, Central Bank, NMPCL. Perhaps the numbers may vary, so we need to look at all the variables here. How many people are in those organizations?
Yes.
Versus how many people we have as police. But given their importance, their relevance to society, in fact, their relevance to stability and whatever it is we're discussing starts with security. So is it a question of fiscal sustainability? I hear you, or prioritization here?
Yeah, and I think that's what we need to discuss as a nation. So the police, they're about 400,000. I was looking at some of the...
Are they really about 400,000?
In terms of numbers, it's between 300,000 and 400,000. And there's a sense that we are even under police, so we need to hire more, right? If you look at some of the constitutional amendment reviews going on, and most states they go to, what's the first thing they talk about? State police, right? So they want to decentralize that. And maybe those are discussions we need to have in terms of, if we decentralize this, can the state governments pay? What everybody that is working, whether in any profession, you should get a fair pay, right? So we now need to go to the discussion, what is the fair pay? How do we prioritize that? And that's a discussion that is even beyond pensions, the welfare of the police. If they are this number, are we budgeting enough for them? Again, let's not forget that the police, they generate internal revenues, right? And some of these organizations have done is, because of the internal revenue they generate, they use it to augment the pensions of their staff. And we've also advocated to the police to engage additional benefit scheme based on the revenues they generate. And we know that the police also generates their revenues. How can they use that to augment and buffer the retirement monies of their staff? And these are some of the representations we have made and continue to make. And we think that if some of these are implemented, it will help to, buffer their retirements.
I've heard you say through much of this conversation, time and again, that you see retirees of the CBN protesting. Do you see the retirees of NIMASA protesting? Do you see retirees of other government MDAs protesting? So it pretty much speaks to the fact that perhaps it's not a problem with the CPS, but a problem with the grade level of remunerations as it varies with different establishments. So to that extent, I'd like to know how we can guard the remuneration of not just the police now, but others across board, particularly the middle class, the lower middle class, against the erosion of the value of what they earn. How can that be done, especially in line with international best practices? Because inflation is a global problem. It's not just a problem peculiar to Nigeria.
Yeah, you're very right, Bukola. I mean, over the last 2 years, inflation has spiraled in Nigeria and it's affected everyone, not just the police. Like I said, the medical association, they're also trying to protest. University lecturers are protesting because we've seen high inflationary trends. What contributory pension schemes are meant to do is the money that is contributed is not just lying fallow, it's invested. And again, if you ask any of the police officers, if they show you their retirement payment slips, you will see that the amount they have contributed is less than the investment returns that they have gotten. So the pension funds are investing for return. And what we need to do is to see how we can invest more so that their returns beat inflation. And there's a lot that we are doing, which speaks to that pension boost I spoke about. The 40% increase that they have seen across board this month is because of that investing and returns sort of outpacing inflation over time. So again, there are a number of things we are doing to ensure that we invest to outpace inflation so that when people retire, their monies are higher. So first thing this month, that increase has seen. So anybody that is retired will see that this month and going forward, what they've received has increased. And it's probably going to be an annual exercise where we see, based on the investment returns, what can we do to increase their payout? So yes, inflation has been high over the last number of years because of a number of the reforms which have spiraled into the real economy. But as pension fund managers, administrators, we seek to see how we can increase those returns and increase the payout to retirees.
Because when you look at the pension fund assets, about 23 trillion naira. How much is it now?
About 24.
It's even 24. Yeah, oh, fantastic. So it keeps doing well.
Yes.
Even the government is looking at it to see if they can take some from it. So it's only fair to say, well, if this is doing well, then the pensioners should get more from it. But I want you to speak to the shortfall that you say was approved. Has it been disbursed? Because, you know, these are terms we need to put out there properly. Approval is one thing. In fact, budgeting is another thing.
Yeah.
But disbursement, has the money landed so that at least these people can know their own fate? So maybe Scott first will respond to that. Has it been disbursed?
No, it hasn't been. And I believe, you know, it's waiting for approval at the National Assembly. The FEC has approved it. So we're going to issue a bond for that. And I think when that comes, there's going to be clearing a lot of the accrued rights, clearing a lot of the salary increases that happen with the accrued rights. And it will filter through to the retiree. So we're going to see a lot of that.
Okay.
So right now, the FEC has approved it. Federal Executive
But it's not
Council
been
has approved
disbursed.
it. It hasn't been
Let's
disbursed.
manage expectations properly so people know. Secondly, these people say they do not want the CPS anymore. It's almost like the Israelites saying, we want to leave, let us go. I mean, wouldn't it be fair to say, I mean, if it's democracy, right? If majority of them say, we do not want to be a part of it anymore, isn't it fair to just let them have what they want?
I was with a former president once, and one of the questions I asked him is that, you know, some sections of the country have said they don't want to be in this country. Why don't you let them go? It's the same question you're asking. You know, in any system, you know, it's just like your son coming to meet you, say, I don't want to brush my teeth. I don't want to go to school, right? Like I said, there's a Congressional Budget Office in the US to say the decisions that these people are making, how does it affect the whole economy? How does it affect our fiscal headroom, right? Where you are going, what does it? So we need to have those discussions. So they're saying they want to go back, they want to go to pension boards. And if we're honest with ourselves, we know what pension boards mean. It's not long we had the issue of the MENA scandal. Pension boards are not transparent. As a matter of fact, let me tell you something. When we went for the last hearing about the police pension board, and when some of the retirees came to make their representations, you know what they were saying? They were arguing on who will be on the pension board, who is going to be on that board. Those boards are not transparent. Those boards, in a sense, is like Israelites going back to Egypt, if I will say so.
So it's not even leaving Egypt, but going back to Egypt.
No. So if you say you don't want to go to this board, well, then where are you going? Even the IGP said in a viral video, where are you guys going? You're moving from fry pan to fire.
But they're the ones that, it's just like people who want to leave APC or they want to leave Labour Party and join the coalition. Even though people have said they are leaving frying pan, but they said leave us alone. Maybe we prefer the fire because we've tasted the frying pan and the heat is not hitting us well. Let's go to the fire.
Well, it's not up to them. It's up to the people making the decision in terms of, you know, it's not up to them because they signed up to work with the police.
So they should basically follow the process if they really want to leave.
Well, in terms of leaving or not, so again, I think my job is to say, you know, these are the consequences of leaving, right? If you stay, this is the benefits of staying and the consequence of leaving. So it's just to put those, you know, I give you life and death.
You know, there are multi-dimensional parts to this conversation. I'm just processing it. So, you know, talk about they don't have maybe a right to leave because they signed up to all of this. But there's a cost to all of this. Like yesterday, I can imagine the dilemma of a police officer trying to shield his colleague that has left the force one way or the other. So police trying to stop police in that sense. There's a consequence, there's a cost to every action we take. And that's what, I know that's not your expertise, but I'd like you to speak broadly to it as well. Which is, where I'm going to with this is the fact that, let's go to the elementary part. You give him a gun. You make promises to him. And you say, serve. He commits to it. Whilst in service, his quality of life is quite low. There's a lot of politics in the force that may make him to stay 10, 15 years out of his 35 years without promotion. That dependent variable affects his pension. At the end of the day, he retires 35 years, and he's looking more ludicrous than even when he was in service, because now when he was in service, he was involved in some sharp practices, illegal practices of collecting bribe and all of that on the road. So that argumented for him. Now he doesn't have that leverage, as illegal as that leverage is. So we need to look at the entire picture and ask the right questions so that we can get the right response. I hope you see my picture here.
No, I definitely see your picture. But what I'm saying is that it is going to be worse for them if they leave a funded scheme to a scheme that is not funded, right? So some people are complaining that I saw a viral video yesterday, I'm receiving 80,000 every month. That money comes every month. You don't need to go and meet anybody, you just get the alert. Under where they want to go, they are not sure whether it's going to come. So if someone tells you I'll receive 200,000, that you're going to pay 200,000 every month under the new scheme, you might receive it 1 month. The second month, you're going to go to a board to go and beg, to go and queue, to go and bribe. And next year, you don't know whether it's going to come. So what I'm saying is that on this scheme, it is funded. You can see it. You can feel it. And it works. At least we all agree on that. Where you want to go to is an unknown variable, is dependent on the budget of the government, which, as we have seen, is stretched. As a matter of fact, we are spending about 50% of our revenues on debt service as of today, right? And if we're going to exit the police, we need about 3.5 trillion naira. We're going to borrow more. So what happens when we borrow more to make some of these payments? Inflation goes up. Even if you have 500,000 naira in your hand, right, and inflation is at 70%, you are worse off than someone that got 80,000 and inflation is at 10%. Right. So yeah.
Sorry, Jeffrey's question about systemic prioritization earlier on is very critical. And one of your responses, I recall, is that the police also has internally generated revenue. But I look at the force and I see a lot of issues. Either it's with, the requirements for service, or the state of their welfare. Look at police barracks, or their infrastructure. Look at police stations. They do not look good. So besides their internally generated revenue, we talk about so many loopholes in governance. How much do we need to ensure that the police pension fund that we require will be sustainable, and where can we get it from when you look at the other loopholes in government wage bill?
That's a jam question. The reason why I'm saying that is because it's multifaceted. So I'm staying on the issue of pensions. If you look at police welfare, their infrastructure, that's beyond my pay grade. But as a country, like Jeffrey has said, it's something we need to address and say, do we give people guns and pay them meager? Do we allow people to stay in service and they're on a particular grade, they're not promotions, their conditions of service are not good? And to be honest, if we have those frank conversations, yes, we're having topical issues. And I said, if you think you are not being appreciated where you are working, you're not getting paid well, what do?
You resign.
Yes. That's another option. Are there other options for them to go to? Are they well skilled enough to say they want to work elsewhere? These are things that we need to ask for.
Okay.
What's the employment of the whole country? If a policeman says, I've worked for 5 years and I'm not happy, can I go elsewhere? Are my skills utilized elsewhere? If people begin to leave an organization, for instance, what the organization do? It now goes and checks, okay, what are my recruitment practices? Do I need to increase my salary? Is that happening? Are the police seeing people resigning and going elsewhere? Are there other jobs? It's a holistic area. But what I want to also talk about is that under the contributory pension scheme, your retirement is in your own hands. And it does pain me when I see people say they retired, they worked for 35 years and this is what they have. It does pain me. But then I now go back to say that with the contributory pension scheme, your retirement is in your own hand because you can determine how much you want to get when you retire. For instance, you said 100,000. We can actually walk back. And you can say, if I want to retire in 5 years' time and I want to receive 100,000, how much will be my RSA? I can begin to say, if I get some bonuses, if I get some salary increases, I can put more in it.
On your own, voluntarily?
Yes, voluntarily. You can put more in it. So we need to get to the place of retirement planning. Retirement planning is a big business in the West. And what I always counsel people, whether retirees or people about to retire, is don't put your retirement in the hands of a government, in the hands of your employer, in the hands of anybody. It is your own to plan. So look at your retirement savings account. How much is there? How much do I need to get to? Do I need to move to another job to get higher salaries?
So let's put facts right. Sorry, Bukola. So that we can help the police here.
Yes.
besides resigning and leaving. So you're saying that government will contribute.
Yes.
Individual, you as the employee rather,
really,
will contribute.
You
But
can
on
also
your own, you can be putting money in your pension scheme.
Yes,
And
voluntarily.
you are voluntary.
And it's increasing
Okay.
the amount and the amount you get when you retire.
Okay.
So if I were earning 100,000 and I have so many competing needs, what can I possibly add again on my own? No, it's clearly an ongoing.
It's an ongoing. But again, it goes back to the remuneration practices of the organization. And I will always say that why are other organizations not protesting? They're under the CPS. And I think that's the key thing to take out of this. But also to say that we empathize with the police and we've been also
stand with them,
represented with their on their welfare.
Absolutely. And, just to add that, knowing that we commit trillions of naira to security, it just seems like a matter of political will. If government really wanted to do it, increase pension fund for the police, they would. But we must anchor the conversation at this point. We've been talking with Mr. Oguchi Aguda, President, Pension Fund Operators Association of Nigeria. Thank you very much, sir, for coming through on this one.
Thank you for having me.